Hey there, Scooby fans. Welcome to another episode of Planet Scooby Reviews. I'm your host, Professor Joel. Professor of what, you might ask? Well, Scoobology, of course. Every week I release a new video where I review a Scooby-Doo episode. They're about 10 to 20 minutes long. If you like these reviews, be sure to check out my website, planetscooby.com. I'll leave a link below. It has all these videos, plus it has any written up reviews I may have done for an episode. And each review includes tons of pictures. This week's episode is for Creepy Cruise. Creepy Cruise is the 7th episode of the 2nd season of the Scooby-Doo Show, and it originally aired on October 22nd, 1977. Unfortunately, you cannot buy this on DVD. After 20 years of DVDs existing, it can't be found anywhere unless you buy a bootleg copy of it. The one plus to this is that you won't have to listen to my normal spiel of me trying to get you to buy this episode on Amazon like I tend to do with all the other Scooby-Doo episodes. Yay! This episode is a little unusual for a Scooby-Doo episode as it takes place entirely on a cruise boat, rather than in a haunted mansion or a spooky swamp. I guess the Love Boat was all the rage at the time, so this setting makes sense. Anyway, grab your life jacket because spoilers ahoy! Let's take a ride on this creepy cruise. The episode opens up with an exterior shot of a large boat docked at a harbor at night. On board, Professor Von Clamp informs the press about his time machine invention. Instead of accolades, our dear professor receives laughter. The reporters cannot believe this man has invented a time machine. Professor Von Clamp vows that they will soon learn that he is the greatest inventor in the world.
Then you will know that I am the greatest inventor in the world!
After laughing the professor off stage, the professor is found outside loading his time machine in the SS Tahitian Star.
The SS Tahitian Star!
Seriously, why isn't this thing in some sort of shipping crate? While loading it, the time machine bangs into the boat's hull. This sends the time machine controls haywire, and the monster appears in the machine. When the few remaining reporters who remain, as many left due to the professor's absurd concept of making a time machine, ask about the monster they just saw, the professor just claims it was nothing. Nothing at all.
It was nothing at all.
The professor then hastily asks the construction workers to hurry up and get his time machine on board. Meanwhile, the gang are headed off to the South Seas on a 3-week cruise ship with all expenses paid. It's all thanks to Shaggy and Scooby winning a contest. They never do say what the contest was, but... Oh wait, hold on a second. Phone's ringing here. I thought I turned it off. Sorry about this.
Congratulations! You've been selected to receive a free cruise to the Bahamas. And like most cruises, all of the expenses are included. All we would like is for you to participate in a short survey. Thank you. Congratulations. For completing the survey, you are receiving 2 free boarding passes for an all-inclusive cruise to the Bahamas.
Shaggy's pumped as this means no ghosts or mysteries for 3 whole weeks. Poor Shaggy. When will he learn that trouble seems to follow the gang no matter where they go? Looking for their cabins, the gang mistakenly end up 20 decks below sea level in the boat's hull. Down there, they spot some flashing lights and, of course, they investigate. Opening the door, they see the time machine. They also find Professor Von Clamp, who tells them not to be afraid.
Don't be afraid. I am Professor Von Clamp.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
The professor claims he was running a test on his latest invention, the time machine. With this machine, he claims, he can travel into the past or the future.
Great Scott!
Scooby investigates a little closer, and he is terrified when a monster suddenly appears in the machine. The gang, however, never do see the monster, and they just think Scooby is having one of his scaredy cat moments. The professor states that he's demonstrating the time machine to a group of wealthy investors on the ship and invites the gang to attend. While he's explaining how he could receive $500,000 for his invention, a creepy man can be seen spying on the group. Shaggy is totally impressed by the $500,000 evaluation, as that would buy 1,000,000 hamburgers.
Like that would buy a million hamburgers.
1,000,000
hamburgers! At the demonstration, which takes place at 10 p.m., the professor explains to the wealthy investors that he has to pay his current investor $500,000, or else the time machine becomes his. The creepy man we saw before stands up and identifies himself as Simon Grady, and he's the professor's current backer. He states that he hopes the time machine will work by midnight, as he wants to be repaid.
All mine.
Simon Grady leaves the room, and Daphne is grateful as she finds him to be such a creep.
Jeepers, what a creep!
Yeah.
For his first demonstration, the professor attempts to return an object from the past.
Great Scott.
There's a malfunction though, and the time machine sets itself to 5,000 years into the future.
5,000 years in the future?
Great Scott!
Everyone is alarmed at this news, even Freddy. The machine erupts with smoke and fire, and the monster appears, this time outside of the time machine. The future monster takes chase after Scooby, and Shaggy pleads with the professor to send the monster back to the future.
Like send it back to the future.
Where? Back to the future.
The professor begins hitting the time machine in order to hopefully set things back to normal. The professor gets the time machine working just in time, and it starts pulling the monster back. Unfortunately, the time machine breaks down, and the monster grabs the professor and steals him away. Naturally, the gang split up in order to find the professor. Not only may the professor's life be at stake, but Freddy also explains the professor is the only chance they have to get rid of that monster from the future.
Great Scott.
Shaggy and Scooby head off in the direction the monster went, and Freddy, Velma, and Daphne go the other way. It doesn't take long for Scooby to find the monster, and a chase follows. Scooby and Shaggy attempt to hide from the monster by dressing up as a sheep, and Little Bo Peep at a costume-themed dance aboard the cruise. The plan does not work, and the monster ends up terrifying everyone at the costume ball. Fred, Daphne, and Velma enter the communications room where they find several closed-circuit screens. Fred has the idea to monitor the screens to see if they can pinpoint where the professor is. Unfortunately, the screens aren't working, and Daphne chalks this up to being a clue. After finding a locked room on the ship, Daphne decides to break in by getting a boost through a vent. Following a brief struggle with some life preservers, Daphne manages to unlock the door on her side. Inside, they find a high-powered laser, as well as some strange metal discs. After more monster chase hijinks ensue, Scooby and Shaggy meet back up with the rest of the gang. Together, all 5 of them go searching for the professor, but are surprised once again by the future monster. The gang dash off into the ship's rope locker and conceal themselves in some coils of ropes. In the adjacent room, which is the crew quarters, the gang can hear some moaning. Investigating, they find the professor tied up within an entangled hammock. Releasing the professor, the gang, the professor, and the investors all meet up. Satisfied that the professor's time machine works, the investors vow to fund the professor $500,000, or in Scooby's eyes, 1,000,000 hamburgers.
Here is our share, $500,000.
The professor thanks the investors for their investment and fires up the machine. The machine begins pulling the future monster back to the future,
Great Scott!
where he belongs. the professor demands more power and cranks the machine up to 11. Before being pulled into the machine, the future monster yanks the briefcase of cash with him. With the monster gone, Scooby and Shaggy begin to celebrate. However, the investors are not so impressed as all their money is gone. They demand the professor fire up the machine and bring back the monster, but the professor claims the power overload has wrecked his machine beyond repair. He cannot return the monster. Plus, he has no new money to build a new time machine. Velma smells a rat and begins putting the puzzle pieces together in her head. She whispers something very quickly to Freddy, and then Freddy tells everyone to relax because he can get the money back. Velma claims her uncle is an electronics genius, so she contacts her uncle on the ship's radio to get instructions on how to fix the time machine. After fixing the machine, the future monster appears with the case of money. Freddy snags the case of money, and Velma fires up the time machine to send the monster back. The monster escapes Fred's clutches and runs with the case of money into the janitor's room. The professor and Simon Grady claim they've already seen enough and they leave. Little do they know Freddy is onto them as he follows them to a spot where they hid the real case of money that was stolen. You see, it turns out that Shaggy was in the future monster's suit after Velma claimed to have fixed the time machine. Shaggy had grabbed an empty briefcase, and this fooled Simon and the professor into thinking the monster was real and had taken the real money. The professor and Simon make a dash for the lifeboats to escape. However, a quick-thinking Scooby replaces the janitor supply closet sign with a lifeboat directional sign, and this traps our diabolical duo.
Well, that mops up this mystery.
Freddy returns the money to the investors, and the boat security officers, who must have been napping this entire time, show up to apprehend the professor and Simon Grady. Freddy explains the time machine was all a ruse to get funding from the investors by fooling them with a phony time machine and a fake monster. The laser they found earlier, along with the strange discs, were all to generate holograms of the monster. Using the ship's closed-circuit TV system, they could project the monster anywhere in the ship. One of the investors inquires about the monster that grabbed the professor, and Shaggy explains that it was just Simon Grady wearing the future monster's suit. All he was doing was slipping into the back of the machine and leaping out on cue when the machine spat out sparks and smoke. The professor exclaims, "A perfect swindle ruined by you meddling kids," before he's escorted into the brig.
Perfect swindle, ruined by you meddling kids.
This episode is awesome. The future monster is creepy, and it was really cool to see the gang in a new environment. It's nice to get a horror sci-fi slant, as we often don't see science fiction in a Scooby-Doo episode. As I mentioned before, this has yet to be released on DVD, and I think I can use that to prove that time machines don't exist, because if it did, my future self would have went back in time and given this to me on DVD. Or maybe that means time machines do exist and this episode never got published on DVD. Or maybe the future monster actually exists, and instead of stealing briefcases full of money, he steals briefcases of this DVD, so we will never know that he exists. Before my mind goes down this rabbit hole any further, if you like this episode, make sure you hit the like button, and please subscribe. A new episode comes out every week. If you'd like to request an episode, and I stress episode as I'm not doing movies yet as they are just too long, let me know below in the comments below. Also, please request Scooby-Doo episodes. This is Planet Scooby, not Planet Saved by the Bell. Anyway, like Velma said, that mops up another episode. See you next week, gang.
A 3-week cruise in the South Seas with all expenses paid.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.